You know, some stories are so powerful, they just feel timeless. And the story of Israel's very first king, it's definitely one of them. It is a classic, epic tale of a dramatic rise and an even more dramatic fall. It's really a story about leadership, about human weakness, and that incredibly dangerous line between confidence and pride. So, let's dive into the tragic story of King Saul. Here's how we're going to break this down. We're basically going to follow the classic arc of a tragic hero. First, we'll look at why the people were demanding a king in the first place. Then, we'll witness the improbable rise of Saul himself. We'll get to celebrate his early victories before we see those first ominous cracks start to appear, leading us finally to his devastating downfall. All right, so our story kicks off in a time of serious crisis. Before there was ever a king, there was a desperate cry for one. We need to explore the pressures that led the tribes of Israel to demand such a radical change to their entire way of life. And this really brings us to the absolute core question of this whole era. I mean, think about it. The Israelites believed they were ruled directly by God. So why all of a sudden would they demand a human king? It's a question that gets right to the very heart of the conflict. Well, the truth is, the pressure for a monarchy was coming from all sides. Externally, they were facing a constant, serious military threat from the Philistines. And internally, the tribes were fractured. There was this growing desire to be seen as a legitimate nation, just like other nations. Without a central leader, they were vulnerable. So the demand for a king was really a demand for security, for unity, and for a national identity. So the people's demand is answered. But the man chosen to lead them was, well, he wasn't a war hero or a prince. He was a total outsider, pretty much the last person anyone would have expected. Let's meet Saul. You have to imagine, the people probably expected a king who looked the part, a seasoned general, a political giant, someone from a powerful family. What they got was Saul, a tall, handsome farmer's son from Benjamin, which was the smallest and least prestigious tribe. And get this, on the day of his public appointment, he was so overwhelmed, he was literally found hiding among the baggage. Yeah, not exactly a commanding first impression. Okay, so you go from humble farmer to anointed king. Saul had absolutely everything to prove. And you know what? He proved it on the battlefield. His early victories were like the anvil on which the scattered tribes of Israel were finally forged into a real nation. His first huge test came at the siege of Jabesh-Gilead. An Israelite city was under threat, and the enemy was offering these horrific terms of surrender. This was Saul's moment. The text says he was filled with the divine spirit, and he managed to rally a massive army from all across the nation, something nobody had been able to do before. His surprise attack was a stunning success, and this decisive victory silenced any doubters. Saul was now truly the king. But power is a dangerous test, and for Saul, success would end up revealing a fatal flaw. This is the part of the story where the cracks in the crown begin to show, where the king's own decisions set him on a path to ruin. Saul's first major mistake wasn't a military one, it was religious. He overstepped the clear boundaries of his authority as king and stepped into the sacred role of the prophet and priest, Samuel. The command was so simple, wait for the prophet Samuel. But with his army getting restless and on the verge of deserting, Saul panicked. He took matters into his own hands, usurped Samuel's priestly authority, and performed the pre-battle sacrifice himself. It was a choice born of fear, a clear sign of that fatal flaw, an impatience that was really a lack of faith, choosing his own judgment over a direct command. So one act of disobedience created a crack in his reign. The next one? It would shatter it completely. He was given a second chance to prove his loyalty, and Saul's failure this time was even more catastrophic. This time, the command was absolute, a total test of obedience. Yet once again, Saul chose his own wisdom. He spared the enemy king, Agag, which was less an act of mercy and more like taking a political trophy. And he kept the best livestock, making up an excuse that it was for a future sacrifice. He wasn't just being disobedient, he was trying to justify it. And that act of partial obedience sealed his fate. He was rejected as king. So, rejected by the very divine authority that put him on the throne, Saul's reign enters its final, tragic chapter. His story just becomes this heartbreaking chronicle of a leader's descent into paranoia, jealousy, and utter despair.
Saul's downward spiral was just swift and brutal. The spirit that once empowered him was gone, replaced by what the text calls a harmful spirit. His court became a place of fear. He grew obsessively, dangerously jealous of the young hero David, hunting him down as a rival. His authority completely crumbled. And in a final, desperate act, he did the unthinkable for an Israelite king. He consulted a medium to try and summon a prophet's ghost.
The cost of Saul's downfall was just devastatingly personal. In one final, bloody battle against the Philistines, he didn't just lose his kingdom, he lost his entire future. Three of his sons, including his beloved heir Jonathan, fell on a single day. The weight of that loss is just staggering to think about.
And ironically, it was his rival, David, who would write the most famous elegy for the fallen king. This lament has echoed through the centuries, a powerful testament to the tragedy of this moment, the loss of a king, his sons, and the hope of a nation, all captured in those immortal words, "How the mighty have fallen."
In his final moments, Saul was a king completely alone, wounded, defeated, facing the humiliation of capture. The man who once hid from his destiny now faced it head-on. Israel's first king took his own life, a tragic end on the battlefield of his greatest defeat. And so, we're left with this timeless question. Was Saul the architect of his own destruction, a victim of his own pride and insecurity, or was he a tragic pawn in a larger divine plan, maybe destined to fall just to make way for an even greater king? It's a question about free will, destiny, and the incredible weight of the crown that still resonates with us, thousands of years later.